Um, so we're at Enrise today again, and a very warm hand to them for hosting this. I think.
Warm hand.
A lot of Enrisers today. I like that.
No.
Sorry?
Oh no.
Oh yeah, sure. Taking all the seats. Yeah, exactly. You can sit here. No, it's very comfy. Okay. And well, our normal sponsors, Servergrow for the website, Ingewikkeld for the Meetup account, and O'Reilly for the occasional book raffle, about which Raffling Rick will tell you all in a few minutes. After, well, Scoop has finally finished. And JetBrains occasionally gives us a PHP Storm or one of their other IDE licenses to raffle. So thank them, I think, but we'll get to that later. The main thing today, as I might have mentioned before, is Scoop. That's why the picture is funny, we think. It's a scoop of ice cream. Oh, well, no. Anyway, you can you can try the QR code if that's your thing. It goes to the joined in page. So please leave the bad feedback you have after this talk there.
I'm not nervous enough, right?
Okay.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate him being here. This is the first time he will. Yeah, the first time ever. No. This is the first time you do this talk, I think.
Yes.
And where will you do it more in the coming?
So in 3 weeks in Montreal. If you want to join me, come over. And then in June, in Berlin.
Okay. Well, and
I don't know. Do
Could-
they have beer
could
in
be.
the unconference? I might be persuaded.
bring your own booze, right?
Right.
Anyway, warm round of applause for Scoop, Stefan Koopmanschap.
Goedenavond. Nobody informed me that it was in English, okay? So, damn it. So? I've been telling him he should learn Dutch, right? So.
No, we will do it in French then.
French, yes. Anyway, welcome everyone. Happy New Year. It's still loud, right? So this is, as Jelrik mentioned, the first time I do this talk. I started pitching it about a year ago to conferences, and only now I've been accepted to a conference with this talk. So I've been developing this talk for a while in my head, and now I hope I've put it into slides correctly. As Jelrik mentioned, there will be joined in as well. I will have the link at the end of the talk, and I really appreciate feedback on stuff I can do better. Because this time it's a user group, which is pretty informal. You can sort of fuck up if you want to. But next time will be a huge conference. It should be slightly better then. So anyway, level up your team. First of all, for those of you who don't know me yet, which I see a couple of new faces, so that's okay. My name is Stefan. I've been a PHP developer since 97 or 98, which means I worked with PHP 3. Who worked with PHP 3 here? Raise your hand, Petra. There's a couple of people from that time. That's good. I run my own company called Ingewikkeld. We do mostly development, consultancy stuff, training, and we organize a conference, or not a conference, an event called WeCamp. I will talk a bit about that in a bit. We're a small company. I've got 2 developers working for me until the end of the month, and then 1 developer working for me. Right, Jelvik? But the thing is, and that's probably most important, over the years, over my career as a developer, I've been responsible for hiring, running a team, stuff like that. So I sort of have some knowledge about learning and getting your team to improve over time. So what this talk is an attempt to try to get some of that experience down into about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. So what I want to know is, who are you? How many of you are responsible for stuff like education or training within your team or your company? Or a lot of anyone that leads a team, even without being responsible for stuff like that? Sort of the same hands. Okay, interesting. Who of you are developers that are not responsible for stuff like that? Interesting, because this talk is aimed at those people that are leading, but it's good that you guys are here, of course, because you can then tell your manager what they should do to have you learn more. So, the main problem in the PHP world especially, but I guess it goes for a lot of other languages as well, is trying to find good developers. That is very hard right now. There's a lot of PHP developers on the market, but most of them are meh. Doesn't always mean that you shouldn't hire them. When I was responsible for hiring a couple of years ago at a company, I was looking not at the skill set of people, but at their mindset. Were they ambitious? Did they want to learn? And I think right now, especially in the current market, it's much wiser to try and hire that meteor developer that's eager to learn to become a senior developer than to try to get that senior developer. Not because it's bad to have a senior developer in your team, but because it's really, really hard right now to find them. So when you're hiring, maybe you should not immediately look for those rock star developers. I hate that term. Those really experienced developers. Instead, look for people that are eager to learn. Especially in the PHP community, a lot of people don't have computer science background because they studied something completely different, like language science or history. Just to name two examples, just random examples of people in this room. That doesn't mean they're bad developers, because most of the time these people started developing because they like to do that and they like to learn stuff. And that is at least easier right now to find those people than to find the people with a computer science background that have been developing for 10 years and still want to work for you. And then the next part, of course, is if you have them, to actually get them up to that point where they want to be. And hopefully by now, you may know this one already. This is like the traditional dilemma. What if we train them and they leave? Okay, but what if we don't train them and they stay? What's worse? If you don't train them and they stay, they will stay basically being the same developer, but in 2 years, they'll be 2 years behind on the technology. Whereas if you train them, they'll become better, and after 3 years, they may leave, but at least in those 3 years, they've done really good work. And there's what I mentioned before, that it's okay, some developers just don't want to learn and they want to stay, they want to have a 9-to-5 job, and that's okay. There's enough companies out there that actually work like that and are successful like that, and that's okay. But if you as a company really want to be ahead of the rest of the market and really build cool stuff, then try to avoid those developers and go for the developers that really want to learn and improve themselves. And if they leave, they leave. You'll find someone else at some point.
Your software is up to date.
If you, well, maybe if your software is not up to date, you might find them as well.
Yeah, that's
They hack your site and you find out who did it. Okay, learning. So basically, I've split up this talk in two parts, and first I'm going to look at ways of learning. Some of them may be obvious to you, some of them may not be. Given that you're here, I know at least one of them is very obvious to you, but we'll get to that. The thing is, we work in technology, and technology is, especially PHP world, but everything around it as well, something changes every day, something new. Any of you worked with PHP 7 yet? Couple of hands, not a lot. How long do we have until PHP 5.6 support is dropped? Any of you know? The end of the year. So that means that even though PHP 7 has just been released, we only have like a couple of months before PHP 5 is basically dropped. And if something happens, yeah, no official support anymore. So that's a good reason to keep on learning. I mean, PHP 7 has been in development for quite a while already. So you could have had a lot of time already to at least have a look at it. Or if you go to conferences or user groups, you could have seen a talk about the new stuff that's coming in PHP 7. There's a need to stay up to date. You can still be working with Solr and not know about Elasticsearch, but maybe Elasticsearch is a better option than Solr by now for you, or maybe not. But if you don't know, you cannot make that decision. And you will stick with old technology, which may work for you, but it may not. So let's have a good look at ways to do that and how we do that. The first, maybe very obvious one is knowledge sessions within your organization, or maybe even within your team. You sit down, and that can be done in several ways. You can take like a Friday, that's the least who is productive on Friday? Oh, wow, okay. I'm usually not that productive on Friday. So Friday is usually for me a good day to, sit down and do some knowledge transfer.
It's your day off.
It's not a day off, it's a day off from customers. I'll get back to that in a bit. I will talk about the Friday. But you can have a meeting on a Friday, or you can have a pizza session. So after work, people stick around, eat some pizza, and then we have a knowledge session. Or you could do a lunchbox session. Once every week or once every 2 weeks, during lunch, you all sit down and one person gives a presentation about whatever they are working on or whatever they are interested in. And by that, they spread the knowledge. You would be surprised how much knowledge is actually available within your team. It's probably more than you realize. And if you're not asking, if you're not facilitating the sharing of that knowledge, you will never know how much knowledge is in your team. So organizing a meeting like this, where someone just does a presentation on whatever they are interested in, will spread that knowledge from that one person to the other people. And it should be very informal. It should be very open. Even the junior developer that just started with your company 2 weeks ago should be able to do a presentation about whatever he thinks is really interesting. And maybe he won't tell anything new for the rest of the team, but at least maybe he learns something from it, because you might get a discussion or something like that. And it has an additional effect, aside from learning, and that is that the people in that team, because they can do a presentation, they feel like they're being heard. They're appreciated for their knowledge because they're able to spread that knowledge, which is a bonus. Well, this one is obvious. You're all here, so apparently you have this idea that a user group might be useful. And basically, A user group is not really that different from the knowledge session I was talking about before. The only difference is it's not within your team or within your organization. It's wider. You meet people. So aside from just learning about a topic that someone is randomly presenting about, you come in a bit early, you have a coffee, you talk to some people, you get to know them, and maybe there's a new colleague in there, or someone that at some point you can ask them a question because you can remember from that user group that they talked about, they worked with something and now you're stuck with it. Stuff like that. So it's really, really useful to be at a user group. And especially here, I mean, this is probably the best example. Everyone can stand here and do a talk, even me. So now Jorik or Rick or Richard.
He really pushed himself, so he didn't invite him.
And what I can recommend, aside from, how many people here do more than just PHP? Other languages? A couple. Oh, actually quite a lot. That's good. That's good. I could really recommend not just attending meetups for the language that you work with. This is useful. PHP Amersfoort is really useful. But I would recommend also going, for instance, to Apeldoorn Dev or to Domcode, which is polyglot user groups. They're not tied to a single language. I went to the Domcode meetup last year somewhere, which was really, really interesting talk about actor pattern, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like mind-blowing to me because it was in a completely different language with a completely different concept for programming. And for me, being stuck in PHP for so long, it was like, whoa, this is really, really interesting. How can I apply this to my work? Okay, so PHP is not the best language for what they were discussing, but I still know about the concepts now, and I know about that language. And if I run into a problem, which I can solve with that information, I can always dig into it again. I can search for it and find the right ways of doing that. And that's also why conferences are very interesting. They are a bit more formal than user groups, but you get a lot more content. Instead of one presentation, you get like 2 days full of presentations, and you have to pick the right ones and the interesting ones, and so there's so much more to learn, which is really, really inspiring. Usually, a conference it won't give you enough knowledge to immediately get started. But it will give you enough background that you will recognize when you run into a problem that you can solve with that information, and then you know what to Google. If you run into a problem and you have no idea how to solve it, it's really annoying because you don't know what to Google for. And if you've been to a conference, seen a presentation about it, at least you know in what direction you should look for. And just like in a user group, the social part of a conference is also very important. And because the conference is usually 2 days, 3 days, you not only have the social part at the conference itself, but also some conference social event, drinks, whatever, bumper cars, like PHP Benelux says. Are there tickets left?
Let me check. There were 5
Okay, he will check just for a minute. There were 5 this morning that became available. No, they're sold out again? Okay, sorry. The bumper cars are awesome at PHP Benelux. They hurt, that's true. Right, David? And just like user groups, for conferences, I can do the same and recommend to you to not just go to PHP conferences if you work with PHP mostly, but go to polyglot conferences as well, such as Domcode conference, which was awesome. Or a technology-specific conference, like Git Merge, which was in Paris last year, which is it's a tool that you work with usually, but if you go to a PHP conference, you see one talk about Git, and usually it's only the basics. If you go to Git Merge, you get a lot of Git stuff, and you learn a lot more. Jelvik is nodding his head. He was there last year. And also, don't just go to the nearest conference. Like, oh, I need to find a conference. Let's find one that's as close to home as possible. No, go to the ones in Paris or in Manchester and London, because you'll meet new people instead of the people here that you might have seen like 10 times already in the last year. Meeting new people is very awesome at conferences, because you'll get a lot of new insights from people, and you'll get to know more people, which is always good. Well, then training sessions, which is really obvious, right, for learning. There's a lot of different types of training sessions. There's, of course, a traditional classroom setup. There's one teacher, there's a lot of students, and they sit and they have their pen and their paper, and they just write down notes and stuff like that. They are still available, and funny enough, that's mostly the training that management likes you to go to, because that's like, you know, you have a classroom and this is what you're going to learn. I've personally found that I learn much more when actually doing stuff instead of just hearing about it. And there's more hands-on alternatives. Academy did a symphony masterclass last year, which was, you know, just sit down for a day and start doing stuff. These are available. So if you're looking for that, if you know that some people learn better from theory and other people learn better from just doing, find out what yours is and go to that one. Make that choice. And then there's new and revolutionary events. So now we go to the commercial break. There's this new and revolutionary event. It's been happening for 2 years already. Full disclosure, I'm organizing it. It's called WeCamp. It's a week long or 5 days long on an island. You get spread up into small teams of 5 people, and with the help of an experienced coach, you do a project from start to end. The feedback we got from WeCamp is really good, because you get, you know, thrown out of your comfort zone. It's like completely different from your normal setting. You work with people you normally don't work with. We make sure of that. And you do stuff you normally don't do, like, you know, okay, what are we going to build? Or how should we plan this that we have enough done that we can present it at the end? That's stuff that most developers usually don't really, you know, do anything with. And you can do that at WeCamp. Ticket sales starts soon. Back to the regular program. If you think 5 days on an island is too much, why not, you know, do it yourself, but this little bit smaller? There's this concept of small controlled experiments. You run into a problem within your project. You don't know exactly how to solve it. How many people have had this situation where you run into something and you have no idea how to solve it? Exactly. What do you usually do when you encounter a problem like that? You sit in a meeting for 3 hours discussing possible alternatives, right? Possible solutions, right? No? Stack Overflow, okay. So I've seen this happen in a lot of organizations. You sit down with as many developers as you can find, and you spend a whole lot of time trying to find out what the best solution is out of the 5 possible solutions that you might have. So why not just try one? Instead of talking about it for 5 hours, you can have one developer work on it for an hour just to make a small proof of concept, see if it works. If it works, one developer spent 1 hour and you've got your solution. If it doesn't work, you've only lost 1 hour instead of 5 people for 3 hours. So why not do that? You can do that as part of your regular work. Whenever you run into a problem that you don't know the solution to, just try it. And you only have to dedicate a small amount of time to that, which will, in the end, save you a lot more time. And a very important part of this concept is that failure is also learning. If you try something for an hour or spend 2 hours on it, and it doesn't work, you learn a lot more from that than discussing about it for 5 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And I'm a big fan of doing stuff like this, making a small proof of concept, see if it works. If it works, it's a proven a solution, and then you can implement it for real. There's a really interesting article, I will post the slides online, about small controlled experiments. I recommend reading that one. Slightly similar to that is Kolkata. The idea behind Kolkata is also that you need to learn through experience. So you want to do something, see if it works. The difference is where with the small controlled experiments you usually take something from your work, an actual problem from the work that you're working on. With Kolkata you usually don't. You start experimenting with something that is new to you and that you really want to learn or that you might think is useful later. So Kolkata doesn't really necessarily have to be an actual problem that you need to solve. You can just take a random topic, just try something new. There's a website, Kolkata website, where there's like a shitload of small practice things that you can do, which usually don't take too long, and you can learn new concepts, which is really awesome. And again, same here. You learn by doing. Whether you're failing or succeeding, you at least learn from that. How many people do pair programming? Oh, that's at least already quite a lot. Pair programming is basically when you sit down and work together on a single thing. One person is at the keyboard and is typing, and the other person is watching, and you're working together, you're talking to each other, trying to find the solution together. Usually this is seen as solving a code quality problem, because there's 2 people working on it instead of 1. You get better quality code, which is true. But it's not just about code quality. It's also about learning. It's about looking at one thing together and learning from each other. Both give input, both learn from the input of the other person. You might just get some new ideas of viewpoints from the other developer's point of view. And the added benefit is that your code is much better because you've been working on it together. There's been some research about that and some statistics that it doesn't really take much longer to pair program, especially because when you do it right together, there's not a lot of issues afterwards.
20 to 50% less.
There you go. That's the tester telling us how to do it. And then, similar to that, but slightly different, is code reviews. How many people do code reviews? That's good. That's very good. Just the extra set of eyes, or maybe 2 extra sets of eyes that go over every change, helps a lot in preventing big issues coming into your code base. One thing, how many people have the book Wisdom of the Elephant? A couple of people. I wrote a small article for that book, which is really important, is that you shouldn't take comments on code reviews personal. It's not a criticism on you or your skills. You should take it as lessons, as the feedback that you get to improve that code. It doesn't necessarily mean you suck. Sometimes. But I've really seen people take code comments or code review comments really personal, and that can lead to a really, really nasty environment, which is not fun. So again, just like pair programming, code reviews are mostly about code quality, but again, we learn. Both the person that wrote the code learns from the feedback he gets, and the person that is reviewing the code learns from the code that is being read, being checked. So both parties learn from this. Um, it's a very nice way. Sometimes it's a very nice way of seeing, oh, you can solve this problem in this way as well. I hadn't thought of that. And sometimes like, what the? That's what was I don't have that comic in my slides. I should put it in my slides. The amount of what the fucks per minute is how you know if your code is good or not when it's being reviewed. It's an XKCD, I think. I will put that into my slides for the next time. So here's an interesting one, documentation. How many people are like me? Documentation? Nah. The code is the document. Fantastic. Yes. Yes. Can I still get out of the project I'm working on with you right now? There's actually two different ways of learning from documentation. It's very obvious, obviously. Read the fucking manual. Read the fine manual. Whatever you want. Reading documentation will usually give you some insight about the software you're working with or how it's structured or stuff like that, understand how things work. Even if you don't read the whole documentation up front, who has ever read a full documentation before they started working with something? Seriously? If the README is the only documentation you have, you're doing it wrong. Uh-oh.
Travel charger that I got at Domco. Did you read the manual?
No?
Oh, that was translated from Chinese to...
For the entertainment value? Okay. Anyway, even if you don't read it up front, when you run into a problem, you should refer to the documentation. It's a good idea, really. Even the unit tests could be documentation if written correctly, because they usually have the contract that you're working towards, so it will explain something about the code. Well, that's the obvious one. Write the fucking manual is also a very good way of learning. The thing is, when you work on code, you think in a way of writing code, right? When you have to document it, you start thinking in a different way, because then you have to think, how can I explain this to someone else? Which is completely different. This is why rubber ducking works so well. Because instead of focusing on the problem, you focus on how to explain it to someone else. It's the same with documentation.
I'd say this goes hand in hand with test-driven development.
This could go hand in hand with test-driven development. So you could do DDD, document-driven development. There's a whole conference about that. Oh wait, that's a different DDD. And the thing is, you need to know how the software works. So you need to understand what's happening there, and then you can explain it to someone else. And that makes you understand different aspects of the software. So basically, don't just write the manual, write all the things. You can write a blog post about this library that you found, or you can write articles for magazines. I know, for instance, if you do PHP, PHP Architect is always looking for authors. So you can just send them an email with a proposal, I found this cool library, or I wrote this cool library, and I want to write an article about it. And most of the times you'll get a response with, oh, that's cool, give me an outline of what you want to write, and you can write an article. And you get paid for it as well. Full disclosure, I don't work for them. I don't have stock in PHP Architect. I just think they're doing a really cool job. How many people are a mentor to someone else? How many people are a mentee? Sort of the same hands, that's interesting.
Does slave driver count?
Slave driver? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I'll get back to the motivation part in a minute. Mentoring can be done within your organization, but also you can do mentoring within the community. And the thing with mentors is that you have one person that is helping someone else. That's basically it. So you can have within your company, you could have a senior helping a medior, or a medior helping a junior, or a senior helping a junior, or whatever. The thing is, people help each other with stuff. They can just be someone that listens to someone else. Just be that rubber duck for a while. They can just give them advice, stuff like that. So, you know, it doesn't really take a lot of time usually, because you could just have, you know, a small meeting once every 2 weeks, see how things are going. Do you need help with something? Are you stuck on something? And it could be anything from code to, you know, I went to this user group. I don't know how to declare the receipt for the gas that I had to spend, and you know, stuff like that. It can be very simple things. It can be, you know, big code problems, whatever. But just having that culture of helping each other really, you know, improves the team spirit as well. And even the mentors will learn, because they will learn about how they can transfer their knowledge to someone else, how they can help someone else, how they can explain stuff, which is, for me, really important for a senior developer. Not just that they can do, you know, they can code well, but also that they know how to communicate and explain things to other people. You could even hire external developers or external people to mentor the people inside your team. You know, you could hire me for a day every month, on Friday, because that's my most productive day. You could hire an external consultant to come in and just, you know, talk to developers, help them with whatever they're stuck with. Sometimes having an external person come in is easier for them to talk about what happens inside the organization. So that's an option as well. Or you could do it in a community. There's a great website, phpmentoring.org. I was told to use app.phpmentoring.org because that's actually the new website, which is much better than the old website. This is a community-driven website where, when you're interested in mentoring someone else, you can register to become a mentor. And when you're interested in having a mentor, you can register to look for someone. Sometimes that happens online because, you know, differences in geographical location. Sometimes you find a mentor very close to you, so you can actually meet, like in a bar or whatever, after work in the office, things like that. And it can definitely help you either find a mentor or find a mentee. Are there any people here that have other ideas of how to learn?
Slave driving works.
Slave driving, yes. Let's get to that motivation part.
Exploring code.
Just browsing through the code. Oh, right, yes. That's a good one. Sorry? Fail. Yes, I mentioned that a couple of times. Are you listening?
We let the new guys write some documentation sometimes. It works quite well.
Yes.
If the source code is readable.
Have the new guys write tests as well?
Yeah, and then the seniors need to review the documentation, and then they can see if is it still what we meant to.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. Have new people write documentation.
Same for letting them write tests.
Yeah.
Or the effect of code.
I'm watching a lot of videos online on YouTube on coding practice and testing and stuff like that. And a lot of them are surprisingly good watch.
Online videos,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
There's a couple of websites that have a lot of online videos, I think. I can't remember the names, but there's a lot of names going around. So what I had, this whole list is not the end. Sorry? Laracasts. I'm sure that helps for some people.
No, it's not only about Laravel. It has
Oh, okay.
actually quite a
I've never been there, but okay, Laracast is a good one. I think there's also a Symphonycast, something like that.
screen for me or something.
Yeah, I don't know. probably there's also one about Zen Framework, and there's one about Cake, and there's a lot of online videos. I think that's a good idea.
There's actually on Twitch you can follow like professional programmers who program, and while they're programming they explain what they're doing, which I thought was kind of boring until I actually watched this. It's actually
Okay, live coding on Twitch.
yeah, it sounds pretty dumb, but actually watching someone go through the steps while how he's trying to debug some compiler error or whatever, it's
Okay.
actually pretty
Oh,
interesting.
that sounds quite cool, actually. Okay, so this list that I had is not finite; it's infinite. There's so many more ways of learning, and the best way of finding out which works for you is by trying them. That's basically it. So now on to part two. Part two is about motivation. So we've got all those ways of learning, but how can I motivate people to learn? Well, first of all, people need to want it. As I mentioned at the start of this talk, you need to hire the people that are willing to learn, that are ambitious to get more information in their head, get more experience, stuff like that. If people start out with the idea that they're starting a 9 to 5, they're just coming into work to write some code and then go home at 5, they're probably not going to learn. There's a couple of ways of getting them motivated, or at least that you can try to get them motivated. But it's going to be a lot harder than with people that actually want to learn, especially with stuff that develops so quickly as PHP or tech. Most important thing when they don't have that real motivation is that you show them that you want them to learn. Because if you're not pushing them to learn, and they're not really motivated by themselves, they're never going to get motivated. So if you work for a company that doesn't even show any interest in your personal development, you might want to try and find another boss. I think Emrise has hiring probably, or yeah, a couple of other companies probably. Yeah. Talk to the people around you. There's a lot of companies hiring. So let's have a look at some of the ways that you can show your developers that you want them to learn. Start with a personal development plan. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to do the learning in a waterfall approach. You don't have to specify everything you want up front. But it's good to have some kind of plan of what you're going to do. It's just like software development.
So how do you get them to write a personal development plan if they don't want to learn?
They don't write the personal development plan. You sit down together, and together you're going to look at where are we now, and where do you want to be in X period. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 5 years. It's always the scary question, right? Where do you want to be in 5 years? I never have an answer for that one, because I just don't know. But you have to sit down together. It's not something that as a boss or as a manager, you can tell them, this is your plan, now go learn. That doesn't work. You can tell them, go write a personal development plan. You sit down together and you're just going to look at where you are now and what you're going to do. The plan only works if you have one or more evaluation moments along the way somewhere, because otherwise we'd be doing waterfall, and we all know waterfall doesn't work. So you need to have some moments where you can look at, okay, so how has it been going so far? And is it still going according to what we expected? Or maybe your interest shifted to something else and we should maybe look at that. Or maybe the training plan, the training that you've chosen is going either way too fast or way too slow. So maybe we should, set the goals a bit differently, stuff like that. It can be very informal. At WeCamp, we made a personal development plan for all of the people there. And it was mostly either a document, single-page document, or maybe even an email, a simple email, just writing down, this is where we are now, this is what we want to learn, and we want to do it in about this period of time. And we're going to have a simple phone call then and then, just to see where you are. So it can be very informal, and as I mentioned, it's not something that you set once and then you don't change anymore. You have to change it along the way if you find out that, you know, it can be improved. And this is something no business person wants to hear, but you need to invest money. What's the expression? You have to put your money where your mouth is. If you tell people, you know, we want you to learn, we want you to develop yourselves, but we don't want to spend money on it, that's going to kill the motivation. It's like, yeah, okay, so you want me to do all this stuff and you don't want to, you know, actually invest in that? Learning costs money. It's very simple. Going to a training, going to a conference, stuff like that costs money. You can either do it by just randomly buying conference tickets here and there or paying for something else. Or you can just, you know, set a budget. For the next year, for the upcoming year, you have a budget of X amount of money, and if you want to do a training, we'll take the cost of that training out of your budget. And so you can, basically, your developers can determine, you know, I want to learn this, or I want to learn that, and now I want to do that training. And maybe they'll combine the training sessions that you never even heard of, which can be really useful. Most important thing is to keep that conversation open. Don't tell them what to spend their budget on. Even just, you know, paying for travel to a user group can be really interesting. I mean, it's, you know, what does a full gas tank cost? 40 euros, 50 euros, maybe 60. Depends on your car. Okay. Give them a bit of money so they can go to that user group. That can be the deciding factor between going to the user group and not going to the user group. So why not just pay for that? Even something as simple as at WeCamp we had one team that decided that just doing a PHP project isn't cool. So they brought an Arduino with them and they started, you know, working with that Arduino and trying to program that Arduino to do stuff. An Arduino costs a couple of dollars. It's not expensive, but you have to buy it. They can buy it, maybe, but if you buy it for them, they'll be more inclined to just, oh, this is cool, this is a nice shiny toy, I'm going to play with that. And they're going to learn from that. So it won't have to be like, okay, here's 5,000 euros for this really expensive MySQL training. It could be something as simple as that. Of course, if they do want to go to that training and it's really interesting, so maybe you have to shell out a bit more cash, but you at least have to be able to give some money, invest in it. And then there's time, investing time. You could offer to, you know, oh, you're going to that user group tonight? Well, just come in at 10 tomorrow. You know, it's like a bit of an exchange there. You spend some work time going to a conference or going to a user group and learning. Similar with a conference. A lot of conferences are on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, stuff like that. Developers invest their time because it's also on a Saturday. So why won't you just give them the time off on Friday to go to the conference as well? That works, well, pretty well in motivating them to actually invest time of their own as well. There's the 80-20 system, or whatever other split you want to make. In our case, for Ingewikkeld, we have the 80-20 system, which basically means we work 80% of our time for customers and 20% of our time on other stuff. Other stuff is, you know, undefined initially. We just look at what is useful to spend our time on. In this case, Mike, who works for me, works on PHP Documenter a lot of during that time. Jelrik spent a lot of time on WeCamp, for instance. Me as well. PHP Amersfoort as well. talk together about what they can spend their time on. Don't just give them like randomly give them time, because they're gonna Facebook and stuff like that. Instead, have them make a proposal. Okay, what is the project that you want to do on Friday? And they come up with a proposal, or just tell them, I've got these interesting things that I'd like to do on that during that time. Are you interested in any of those? Because sometimes people cannot come up with stuff themselves. Not all of the stuff that we worked on during the Fridays actually became a real thing. We've worked on stuff that eventually, either because we didn't have enough time, or we didn't have enough interest, or because it just didn't work out, we just threw away. We still learned from it. It's just, I think with Google, Google killed this program because they weren't getting enough out of it. Because they had so many projects that got killed eventually. But in the end, the way Google Docs now works, with the working in the same document together, that comes from Google Wave, which is one of the 80/20 projects they had. So there's a lot of stuff that comes from projects like that you can actually use in your company as well.
Even Gmail is
Yeah, and then Gmail is now killed. So it's still the same technology, of course, also in Inbox. And your company can, aside from just getting a product out of it, you can get a lot more. My company is listed as a sponsor on the PHP Documenter website, on the PHP Amersfoort slide, every month. Every month you see my logo come by. Thank you. And then of course there's WeCamp, which is epic. Okay, there's a team called Epic here. Epic is upstairs. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's complicated. The most important lesson that if you manage a team, if you lead a team, if you run a company, most important lesson that you should take away from this talk is that you should be enabling developers to do what they want and what they can do. Raphael Dooms, one of the organizers of Amsterdam PHP, he dubbed the term enablers for the organizers of the user group, because they're not organizers, they're not crew, they're part of the bigger group. They just enable people to do stuff, which I really like. And I think in PHP Amersfoort, we're also called enabler. You are also called enablers, right? No. Oh, not? I thought that was true.
Yeah, but it still sounds like someone helping an addict. Sorry.
Aren't you addicted to PHP?
Yes. No, I'm helping you.
Okay. Anyway, we should try and be responsible for getting people to get the best out of themselves, even if that means after 3 years they leave you. That's okay. People leave. They may leave if you do the training. They may leave if you don't. But it's worse if they leave or if they stay and you don't. People leave every once in a while, right, Jelrik? You shouldn't be scared of people leaving.
I won't be in Montreal, so you.
I will. Yeah. I will try to do another slide then. Of you in an ice cone, right? Okay.
That's just not funny.
Anyway, don't be scared of people leaving. That's just how things work. People move on because they want to find a new challenge, or just switch context or stuff like that. Be afraid that they don't learn and they stay. So that's it. This is the link to the joined in. Please give me feedback on what I did right and what I can improve on, especially the latter one, because that's important for the next time I do this talk. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Kolkata. Do you know which site it is?
I think it's as simple as codekata.org. .com? I hear .com. I thought .org, but one of the two will work.
Maybe both of this.
Maybe both works.
Okay, it's codekata.com and codekatas.org.
Ah. Codekata.com, codekatas.org.
Codekata.com is a site about cats.
Which is obviously more important, so we'll go with that one. Okay.
So maybe
Anyway.
In addition to don't be afraid if people leave.
Yeah.
If you're a team lead, don't be afraid to let people go. Is also
Ha. This is indeed a good one. You shouldn't be afraid to let people go when they don't learn enough, when they don't develop enough. There will be people on your team at some point in the future that just don't want to learn. That's fine if they operate well in your team, but sometimes at some point they will not operate well in your team anymore because they've fallen behind so much on technology that it's just not interesting. You should indeed don't be afraid to have people leave. We've had some interesting meetings on stuff like that at one project at some point.
Wonder what you're talking about. Any more questions?
What do you do when people don't synergize really well with each other in the team?
Okay, so that's an interesting question because that's not really, usually not really an issue of learning, but more of, personalities, stuff like that. Either if you have multiple teams, you can try and just hustle the teams around, which can sometimes really work out well. Or at some point, someone needs to leave. Team building activities, yeah. If there's really no connection between the two, and then no team building exercise will help that, I'm afraid.
Still doesn't mean that it has to be a problem.
It doesn't have to be a problem, but at some point it may become a problem. It may become a problem, maybe in the mind of one of the team members. I know. I've had projects where I left because it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
This is being recorded, guys. I want to, keep this image of a good employer.
That's true, but I also know of the similar situation where there's just one person who doesn't connect with the rest of the team, but still is good at his job,
Right.
and can still perform and can still do the stuff that's actually asked of somebody.
So that
could
can
also
work out well, but
You just
on the
have to
long term,
discuss.
it can also create a really toxic environment. So you have to be really careful when you do that.
It can, but it not
It doesn't have to,
necessarily. No.
of course.
Yeah.
it just doesn't work.
More questions?
More questions?
Anyone? Everyone?
No? Okay. If you want to follow me on Twitter @Scoop, or check my blog leftontheweb.com. The part of the topic of this talk has actually been turned to a blog post on this blog, and that blog post refers to another blog post on the Dutch Web Alliance blog, which is also about this talk. So you can read a lot of the stuff that I talked about tonight on this website and Dutch Web Alliance website. So thank
it's
you very much.
basically blogception.
Yes.
Okay. An applause for Scoop.